So obviously it was a record quarter. And I'm so curious, how does this happen as restaurants are reopening and still DoorDash speeds up?
It's great to be with you, Emily. Well, I think what you saw in our quarter is that there really are two types of dining behavior, and that you can dine in while you also dine out. And I think, the sticky behavior that we've seen so far in 2021, even though we're largely in a recovery year, although I recognize that the pandemic isn't yet entirely behind us, compared to 2020, where we were largely in the pandemic or heading into the pandemic, you're still seeing most of that behavior stick around.
You forecast a potential slowing coming up ahead. And with the Delta variant ticking up, I would think that means DoorDash also speeds up. Why would it slow down?
Well, I think, a lot of the pandemic kind of sharpness in behavior has certainly been a lot more muted as all of us have figured out new ways to cope and deal with how to live in this environment. And that's why I don't think you're going to see any large changes in behavior as a result of the pandemic. So instead, what you actually see in our guidance is the seasonality that's actually reflected. And this was happening every year that DoorDash has been around. It certainly was masked during the year of 2020, where we were living under a pandemic. But in a more normal year where we've kind of, as consumers been used to living in this way, you see that in the summer months, people are vacationing again, people are eating out again, and as a result, ordering less from home. So some of that seasonality is what you see baked into our guidance.
Meantime, the big story of the week, Tony, that DoorDash was in talks to buy Instacart at a $40 or $50 billion valuation. That obviously didn't happen. Why didn't you do that deal?
Well, look, I mean, I'm not here certainly to comment on any, rumors or speculation. What I would say in general is that, at DoorDash, the bar for anything M&A has always been very high. And, when we look at opportunities in this area, we're looking for businesses that certainly can help us enter or accelerate into an attractive market, whether it be a geography or a new line of business, businesses that can help increase our potential for long-term profits, as well as businesses that give us extra management bandwidth. As it's always about execution. And unless, an opportunity is management accretive, you really can't achieve, I think, all of the goals behind something with M&A. So look, for us, without commenting on anything specific, what I would say is that that's kind of how we view the lens of anything M&A.
So what's the move in grocery without this? And perhaps the opportunity to reach retailers that might not be happy with Instacart, and especially, in non-restaurant categories?
Well, I think we're so early in all of these categories. I mean, if you take our core business of restaurants, where we're the leading platform in the U.S., we're still single-digit percentages of the overall restaurant industry. Restaurants had their best quarter ever in the history, and they're already far or at their pre-COVID levels, which is really exciting to see. As you head into these new categories, we're even at an earlier inflection point. And I think what that says is that customers aren't yet satisfied with some of the products available to bring them online. And that's why they're not yet changing their preferences from their offline behavior. So I think there's going to be a long runway here where you're going to see a lot of invention. And what we're doing at DoorDash, to start in something like grocery, is really solving that middle of the week run for customers, where we're helping you get your items that you consume the most often, like your milk, your bread, your egg, your cereal, replenished in under 30 minutes. And that way, I think we can start building a relationship in this long runway for invention in this massive category.
So, you've really been focused on organic growth up to this point, but you're also in talks to buy a stake in the German grocery app Gorillas. I wonder, is Europe a different game because of entrenched competition there? And how big might that stake be, Tony?
Well, again, without, I think commenting on, rumors or speculation, what I would say is, I mean, you're right, Emily, in the premise of the question, which is, historically at DoorDash, we've built our way to getting to where we are. That doesn't mean that we have a religious view against M&A. It's just that the bar is really high. And, when we look at these opportunities, it really has to meet, three thresholds at the same time, which helps us enter new categories of business, increases our profit potential over the long run and adds to the management bandwidth of our team. And that's how we view and evaluate all of these opportunities.
So, curious how your thoughts are evolving on M&A with a new head of the FTC, all of this antitrust scrutiny. How does that play into, the deals you explore and whether you do them or not?
Well, I think when I look at where our business is today, where we're a single percentage point of our core business of restaurants, and as you add in these other categories, we are even much smaller, a tiny fraction of the amount of sales that's being generated online. And if I were to expand what we do across the board, I mean, we're just a drop in the bucket, from that lens. But again, when we look at M&A opportunities, it's much less in the context of how an industry structure is being changed because we're so early. It's much more about the criteria I laid out and really just comparing that against where we are as a business and what our own trajectory is in our natural build.
Now, I should add that shares dropped after you reported yesterday after hours, but closed in the green today. I'm curious about the competition with Uber, as the company continues to double down there. They're seeing more new customers coming from the ride-sharing app as more people start to use that again. Do you have any concerns about ceding share to Uber in that way?
Well, I can only speak to what we've seen, and what we've seen in the marketplace is that we've continued to gain market share despite competitive actions. We gained 3 points of share in the quarter. We've gained 12 points of share now over the past 12 months. So in terms of what we're doing for our customers, it seems like it is responding in the marketplace.
Okay. Now, yesterday on the call, you got really fired up about commission caps. You called them violently unconstitutional. We've seen this permanent cap in San Francisco, a bill to do the same in New York. They've rolled off in other cities. But if other cities do add them, how long does that cost continue to drag?
Well, mostly what we've seen when it comes to working with cities has been a very productive relationship. In fact, when it comes to something like these commission caps and related ordinances, most of them are actually lifting. I think it's a recognition that restaurants are now seeing restaurant reservations, for example, at 90% plus of pre-COVID levels, that restaurants as an industry aggregate are seeing the highest sales ever, in spite of the fact that we're not fully recovered. And so I think it's actually been largely productive, but you're right. There are a couple of exceptions, literally countable on actually just one hand, and where I think some cities, to take even the words of their own mayors, are overstepping in terms of their actions and harming the audiences they're actually trying to help.